The City Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, is meeting in council chambers today on Thursday, May 11th at 6:05 p.m. for the purpose of discussing review of the compensation of the school committee per Chapter 2, Article 4, Division 11, Section 2, 142 of City Ordinance. This meeting is being held in the City Council Chambers, 93 Washington Street, Salem, Massachusetts, on the second floor. Individuals may participate in person or remotely via a platform called Zoom by clicking on the webinar link posted in the agenda or navigating to zoom.us, entering webinar ID 813-6098-5752 and password 376293. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 6, 2023 at 11:30 a.m. Present for the Committee on Administration and Finance, we have all members except Councilor Watson-Felt. Just double check we're not in Zoom. Okay. And present from the Committee of the Whole, we have Councilor Prosnewski, Councilor Cohen, of course, and Councilor Morcillo, and Councilor Varela. Everybody, I believe, has received a copy of the salary survey that was provided by the Human Resources Director. We took up a similar matter just a few weeks ago when we reviewed the compensation of the mayor. This will be a similar discussion where we'll take a look at what the neighboring communities to Salem are doing in terms of compensation for their school committee members. And we will discuss whether we think the folks on our school committee here are being well compensated. And I will start by simply opening the floor if anybody has any comments they'd like to dive in with. Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one kind of beginning comment or question. Is there anything that requires us to make this a percentage of the mayor's pay? And is there anything that requires a certain threshold where benefits have to be added in?
As far as I know, there is nothing relative to the threshold of benefits. I don't think that is a factor, and I think it is 7.5% of the mayor's pay.
But is there a requirement that it has to be a percentage, or can we just set an amount? I guess that's the question.
I believe the requirement is that it has to be a percentage. Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Chair. So I've been doing some research into this, as always, and the current ordinance is written that it is a percentage of the mayor's salary, so we can continue on that path and keep it a percentage of the mayor's salary, but it's an ordinance, so if we wanted to change it into something else, we could do that as well. The current ordinance is that it's 6% of the salary of the mayor. We may recall that we just reviewed the mayor's salary is $150 annually, so 6% is, I believe, $9,000, and they're paid that 4 times a year. Concurrently, ours is 10% of the mayor's salary, and we're paid biweekly. I did confirm, because I had the same question about benefits, so I just got an update from Ms. Camerata, the HR director, and I also just spoke with Ms. Renard. So it's the way the ordinance language is written as to the determination of the benefits, and then how it's linked to Mass General Law. And I am going to try my best to explain it. I apologize, I wish Ms. Camerata was here or Ms. Renard was here to explain. But the way that I'll start with the council salary because we're all familiar with that, and we provide, or we're eligible for benefits. And the ordinance is written that the city council shall receive for their services such salary as the city council. I'm just gonna leave it at that. So it's a salary that we receive. And the compensation of the school committee, with the exception of the mayor, shall receive annually for their expenses a stipend. So, and then that's linked back to language in Mass General Law that I also have. Sorry, if you could bear with me. I don't have that as easily available. That was an email that was just sent to me. I thought it was printed up. But so then that's linked back to Mass General Law as to what is and is not eligible. But I just spoke to Ms. Renard, and we could also change that. So if we wanted to change that it's salary versus stipend, and then they would easily be eligible for benefits, which of course has an additional cost to it. But that's the background to all of that as to the benefit piece, because there is the difference there in the sense of how it's spelled out. I hope I did a good job explaining that. And I'll just say too, if I may, Mr. Chair, that I thought this was interesting that it has not been reviewed since 2017, as I do feel the school committee members' roles have drastically intensified, especially since the COVID pandemic of 2020. There was a lot that we all went through, but I feel, especially like the Board of Health, for example, who are volunteers, the school committee having to deal with all of that and what that entailed, that the number of hours purely and just the stressors that they went through and the decisions that were made, I would think of them as equals to the council personally. And I personally would think that they would have equal salary. But that's just my thought in that regard. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation now and bringing it back up to talk, which we should do every 2 years.
Thank you, President Stott. Any other comments? Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of A&F. I remember when I moved here in 2008, their stipend was $4,000. So, you know, one of the issues that came up when we were talking about council salary is any amount going to be enough to attract people based on the salary or the stipend itself? No. So I'm fine with an increase in the percentage, but I'm more supportive of making it a salary that makes them eligible for benefits for two reasons. One, it's better for them financially because a stipend is like a 1099 and it increases their burden tax-wise. And the other thing is, and this came up at one of the health benefit meetings, is that the more people we have using the health insurance, actually it diminishes a little bit the overall cost per person. So it gives us a little more leverage. So I don't think adding 6 people to the health insurance is going to significantly impact the city that much. So I support those two things in particular, going on salary and also enabling them to get the benefit.
Thank you, Councilor Cohen. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and I appreciate the comments by the other two councilors. Really good points. First of all, about the importance of the school committee and the work they're doing, and how complex with COVID, the current climate on there it being really challenging at what the opposition educators are facing in this day and age, and it's become really dicey, and it's an extremely important job. And I think this stipend, it just feels that makes it seem like they're a little undervalued. So I do support an increase. And also, I'm never comfortable when something hasn't been reviewed in 6 years. As I've said before, I think it's better financial management that any kind of pay or stipend is regularly at least looked at and discussed. So that alone, that it's been that long since this has even been considered for an increase, makes the argument that an increase is warranted here. And I found it interesting. I didn't realize what triggers the benefits, whether it's a stipend as opposed to a salary. So I would also support this being a salaried position as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Merkel. Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair McLean, not being a member of the committee. Thank you, everybody, for these comments. And I do agree. I think right now, as it stands, I believe that that compensation or stipend for the school committee is a little undervalued. So I think it would be a positive thing to increase it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Varela. Councilor Marcillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, not being a member of the committee. Just a bookkeeping issue here. So this comes out of the school committee budget, and it doesn't kick in until January of next year. So if I'm asked, okay, that was a question. When does it kick in? And also, if we're going to raise the salary tonight, that has to be, dealt with in their budget that's coming up, which is why we're doing this. And I just want to figure out how much of it needs to be handled right now as opposed to January 1st, I guess.
That is a fair question. The one comment I'll add on along those lines, I do believe it kicks in after the next election, so it would kick in at the beginning of next year. That said, as we were discussing the compensation of the mayor previously, I do know that there have been prior council actions where it was determined to make increases not necessarily immediately. So there have been past occasions where people chose to phase things in over years. And so we have that choice as well, right? We can make a determination to have this start at a particular fiscal year or at a particular calendar year if we're worried about trying to figure out the potential cost immediately while their budget is rolling in. So just a point of consideration. Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also agree with that because we do want to be conscious of a budget that's not in the details, our budget. And I've ran some numbers. So currently, the school committee salary of 6% is $9,000 annually, $54,000 total. Say we just moved it up incrementally to like 7%. That would be $10,500 annually or $60,000 total, so about $6,000 increase, which I don't think would be, I mean, obviously it affects the budget, but I don't think it would be like oh my gosh, we're gonna have to like not have a para or something. Like I think it's something that's probably doable. Ultimately though, it's not I'm not in the weeds with the budget there. And as to what the chair said, we could do this different ways, especially since there hasn't been a review in a while. We can incrementally add this in. I think the default obviously wouldn't be able to start, and nothing that we do tonight would not be able to start until the earliest after inauguration of January 1st, 2024. But I'm just looking at the mayor's one I happen to have in front of me, and it says, effective inauguration day 2018, the mayor shall receive a salary of X starting in 2019. So it's even more of a step, and it's a little weird, but we could, have some flexibility there, especially since there is kind of quite a difference between the two. And I have other numbers if anybody's interested to see what the differences would be for increasing. The other part, I think it's interesting to see what the other towns pay. It's kind of really all over the map. I will say, as someone that usually has someone in tow with me and does not tonight because I am paying for a sitter, that as a parent, I want parent representation on the school committee and right now the school committee salary does not cover a sitter. You would lose money serving on the school committee if you needed to have a sitter for every single meeting that you went to. Granted, not everyone has a fun Stella that they can drag along with them now, but I would just also like to point out that it does not even cover the bare essentials for what I think would be something that we would want to encourage and have. But it's definitely, I'm really surprised by the survey of the various towns that it does really range. And we are kind of currently in the middle with the 9,000, but it seems to be kind of all over the map.
Do you have other percentages?
Sure. Which ones would you like to know? I did a 0.25% up until 10, so. Sure, so 8% is 12,000 annually, which is 72. Total for that, so that's for the whole body. So currently the whole body, I'll backtrack, the whole body currently is 54 a year. The cost is 54 a year. So if you go up to 7%, that's 6%, 7%, the total cost is 63 a year. 8%, the total cost is 72 a year. 9%, the total cost is 81. Yes, 81 a year. And 10%, the total cost is 90,000 a year. Councillor Cohen? Oh, I'm sorry. It was a default to mine. I'm sorry.
I'll wait for the chair to recognize me.
I mean, I'm appreciating all the information. If you just want to switch chairs, it's fine. I'm just kidding. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I do feel like by making it a salary, that is going to kick in some benefits that for some people is going to be really significant. It could be, you know, $5,000, $10,000 benefit to people who are hustling to get their own health insurance. So I would be personally in favor of 8% as a salary, because I think that it's very hard because we don't know what all these other communities, school committees do. I know a couple of them that don't meet as many times as the Salem School Committee, and towns are different than cities. So I'm just giving my input that, you know, if it comes to the full council and it's 8% and salary, I would vote for that.
Thank you, Councilor Cohen. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Just to double check, so the current total is $54,000 in their budget, and an 8% would bring it to $72,000. Yep, just so I have that right. I also want to say thank you for bringing those numbers to us, Councilor Stott.
Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I think I would be comfortable bringing the 8% that Councilor Cohen recommended as well as the salary. So if there's no further discussion, I'm happy to make a motion for that. Make a motion to recommend 8% of the mayor's salary. So I guess this is an ordinance change, recommending 8% of the mayor's salary, and to change, let's see, where is it? At some point it says stipend in here, change that to salary.
Councilor Hapworth makes a motion to amend the ordinance to reflect a changed percentage of the mayor's salary at 8% and change the word stipend to salary. Seconded by Councilor Merkel. It's all under discussion, but one thing I will sort of add to this conversation is I tend to agree with Council President Stott that the case for valuing the school committee at a level that's commensurate with the city council is pretty compelling to me. I think the work that they do is just as important as the work that we do in this community. Certainly from a financial point of view, since we are an A&F, the schools in general are a massive part of what we spend money on in this city, and so having that done responsibly is really, really important, especially in the service of our students. I think it's fair to say that probably making a jump from 6 to 10 all at once is going to be a little bit difficult to absorb, but I do think we should continue to consider options for perhaps phasing that in over time so that a few years' time from now they do actually get paid at a level that's commensurate at the level that we get paid. That said, there is a motion on the floor. Councilor Stott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Agree with all of that. I will note that this does require an ordinance change in the language as well, and there are a few spots where it says stipend versus salary, as well as how the payment is received, and I would like the city solicitor to review any additional language that we might propose this evening, unless if you have the language and we want to try to edit it now and get it to Beth before our meeting this evening, but we do need to amend the ordinance, basically. So I just wanted to point that out, that the motion would have to be either to send it to Ola to amend the ordinance, or send it to the city solicitor to suggest language for us to amend the ordinance. But we want to make sure that the language is covered for the changes there.
Thank you, Councilor Stott. One thing I will point out is, according to my reading of the ordinance that has compelled us to have this meeting, what we're required to do is meet and offer a recommendation, right? But it's not dictated what that recommendation has to be. So I think it is reasonable if we come up with an agreement in principle about what we want to do to make a recommendation that this matter be moved to OLA so that the language can be hammered out and passed at a final date. Councilor Merkel.
Thank you, Chair McLean. Well, one question. Do we have to include, or should we include in the motion the date that it would be in effect?
We don't have to do anything, but I think it makes good sense. Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I'm happy to amend my my motion to recommend that this be sent to OLA with those recommended changes. I'm sure that date would be one that the city solicitor would also recommend changing from January 15th, 2018 to January, whatever date it would be, 2024. But I think all that could happen, come back to OLA, and then we could vote on it as a full council.
Any further comment on the motion on the floor? So Councilor Hapworth has amended his motion such that the matter will be recommended to OLA with the intention that we are raising the percent, we are changing from a stipend to a percentage-based salary at 8%, and that we will establish a date when it will be effective, and that in OLA we will finalize all of the language changes so that it can be passed finally and made effective. Is everybody on the same page? Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will say I looked at so 2017 was the last time this was reviewed, and it looks like that's what happened. So it went to A&F, and then it went back to council to OLA, but it does need to be back to council by May, so the next meeting. Just dot my I's.
Anything further? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion on the floor? Let the record show I see 3 hands plus my own, which is 4. The matter carries. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to do relative to this matter before we adjourn? I'll entertain another motion. Motion to adjourn from Councilor Merkel. All those in favor? 3 hands plus my own is 4. Meeting is adjourned.